Hey guys, in today's video, I'm going to discuss the most interesting matches that I saw on day one at the 2025 US Open. And just like I did in the last few Grand Slams, I'm going to try to do one video per day. Let's see if I can make it happen. But what stood out to me were two matches on the female side. And both of these matches were incredibly dramatic. It beats any show that you can watch on Netflix. That's one of the reasons why I love the game of tennis. Now, another reason why I love the game of tennis, because it's such a global game and you get introduced to people from different countries, different cultures, and it's such a unifying game. Anyone that played tennis at a somewhat competitive level, maybe in college, you know that you've met people from all over the world. And that is the most beautiful thing about the game of tennis. Now, two players from countries that are not known for having great tennis players are doing well because for the first time in history, both players from each country have won a match at the US Open. And these players are Alexandra Eala and Janice Tjen. Now, I'm going to be honest, I was not familiar with Tjen. I did see her going through the qualies, but I've never seen her play. And she took out Kudermetova, who played extremely well in Cincinnati, reaching the semifinals. And I was very surprised by this. And I even had Kudermetova taking out Raducanu because Kudermetova, former top 10 player, very dangerous. So Tjen taking out Kudermetova is a bit of a drawbuster for me. But the level of excitement from people from Indonesia is incredible. I've seen a lot of things on social media, and Tjen happens to be an extremely talented player. When I watched this match today, she reminds me a little bit of Jack Sock, the way she winds up on her forehand. She has excellent technique, seems to be a very strong player physically, who also doesn't shy away from coming to the net and finishing the points off up there. So she plays Raducanu next. I think that's going to be a very interesting match. Now, the two best matches that I've seen today on the WTA side were Danilovic against Uchijima and, of course, Eala against Tauson. But let's start with the Danilovic match. And like I said before, you couldn't write a show that has more drama than this particular match. Now, let me guide you through it. Danilovic loses the first set in a tiebreak. She wins the second set. She's up 4-3 in the third. She breaks. She's serving for the match. Now, Danilovic has one of the best serves on the WTA Tour. She's a lefty, and she's a very talented player. So as she's serving for the match, she's playing very confidently and serving well, and it looks like this match is over. She's up 5-3, 40 love, but she loses a couple of points. And you can see on the next rally that the nerves started to creep in because the forehand started getting shorter and shorter. She got really tight on that point. She ended up losing that point. She wasted 3 match points and had a very negative reaction after that. She loses her serve. Uchijima holds. Now it's 5-all. And Danilovic finds herself down break point at the game at 5-all. She saves it, plays an excellent point. She ends up holding, and now it's 6-5 Danilovic in the third. And it's love 40. Another 3 consecutive match points for Danilovic, but she cannot convert any of them. Uchijima ends up holding this game, and you would think that Uchijima would ride the confidence into the tiebreak, and Danilovic's chances are very low, and it surely seemed like that because Uchijima went up 6-1 in the tiebreak, and then 7-3 in the tiebreak. But Olga Danilovic came all the way back and found herself up match point 9-8 in the third set super tiebreaker, and it was on the Uchijima serve, and Danilovic hit an excellent forehand return, hard on the middle, and Uchijima slices a forehand, and the ball lands this close to the baseline, and Danilovic had to retrieve back. She hits the forehand, sprays it long. Uchijima wins the next point. Now Danilovic is serving, and she serves up a double fault. An absolutely brutal loss for Danilovic. Now, of course, this match was very dramatic, but even more dramatic was the Eala match. And I've been following Eala ever since that Miami tournament, where she played spectacular tennis. Very aggressive on the return of serve, doesn't shy away from coming to the net, has excellent volleys, can dictate with her forehand. She also has an excellent backhand where she can redirect the ball and can hit winners with ease. The one weakness in her game is her first serve and her second serve. But I think the fact that Eala is a lefty, it doesn't make the serve quite as vulnerable, because when she puts some junk on there, it still tricky to return. We saw that with Irani in the mixed tournament where Fritz and Rublev were missing returns off the Irani 70 miles an hour serve. But in any case, Eala comes out in this match against Tauson playing extremely well, and she has a lot of supporters that are cheering her on. Tauson doesn't play a good set. She's shaky. But then, after losing this first set 6-3, Tauson gets her game together, wins the second set 6-2, and is up 5-1 in the third. At this point, it looks like Tauson was going to take this match. Now, Eala holds, and Tauson is serving. She has an excellent serve. Up to this point, Tauson had 12 aces in the match, and you would think that she would hold and win this match quite comfortably. And she finds herself at 30 all, up 5-2, and she throws in a double fault. It is at this point where Eala had the belief that she can actually still win this match. You can see it in her eyes. That was the opportunity to shift the momentum. And the momentum truly did shift because Eala breaks the Tauson serve, holds serve, and now 5-4 Tauson serving for the match for the second time at 30-15. There was a controversial ball because Eala had an easy put-away ball very close to the net. And she made contact on her side of the court. You can see it in the video replay because Tauson was complaining and wanted to see the video footage. However, the tip of the racket was across the net. And a lot of people are confused with the rules. And I'm actually a little bit confused with the rules as well because they can get quite complex. So here's the deal. If someone hits the ball with backspin, so if the ball goes over the net and then because of the backspin it travels back over to the side it came from, the player is allowed to reach over the net and play the ball. That is 100% legal. However, if the ball doesn't have backspin, then of course you're not allowed to reach over. But here's the question. The tip of the racket did cross the level of the net, and I wasn't sure whether that's legal or not. So apparently, based on the decision from the umpire, it depends on the contact with the ball. So the continuation of the stroke, I guess, doesn't matter. Now, you guys please correct me if I'm wrong in the comments section, but I was of the belief that you cannot reach over the level of the net, even though you might make contact with the ball behind the level of the net, because you have to understand this ball was quite high and Eala played it with a downward trajectory, so the contact was established behind the level of the net, but the tip of the racket crossed over the level of the net. So apparently that's legal. I was sure that that was an illegal play. But in any case, Eala gets the point. Now she's up 15-40, and Tauson actually throws in a double fault, and now it's 5-all. And the crowd is extremely excited because we're going to get a dramatic ending to this match. Eala is playing excellent tennis, and she finds herself up a match point at 9-8 in the tiebreak. And on this particular match point, Tauson hits one backhand right on Eala's baseline. Then on the next backhand, she hits another ball this close to Eala's baseline, and she saves match point, and now it's 9-0. And immediately, I had flashbacks to the Eastbourne final. Now, I've been tracking Eala's results, like I said, ever since Miami, where she played extremely well, making it to the semifinals and losing to Pegula in 3 sets. Now, after that, she went on to the clay season, and clay is not Eala's favorite surface. She didn't necessarily play that well during the clay court season. But then, as we went on to the grass, this surface suits Eala much better. And she played a tournament in Eastbourne where she had to play qualies. And all the way from the qualies, she made it into the final where she played an excellent player called Maya Joint. And Eala had 4 match points in this final and ended up losing it 7-6 in the third. This was an absolute heartbreaker for Eala. So when I saw Tauson saving that first match point in a similar fashion how Joint was saving match points against Eala in the Eastbourne final, I thought this might end badly again for Eala. But I've talked about this many times in my previous videos. I strongly believe in something that I call the tennis equilibrium. And I believe that over the course of a player's career, independent of level, you are not always going to be unlucky. Because sure, you are going to lose some matches that you should have won, but you also are going to win some matches that you should have lost. I was wondering whether this was going to be the case for Eala. Now, she finds herself up 10-9, her second match point. And Tauson, again, on the second ball in the rally, she hits a backhand from way behind the baseline, down the line for a winner. And again, this ball is this close to Eala's baseline. I've talked previously that Tauson has one of the best two-handed backhands directed down the line on the WTA Tour, and it surely was clicking when she was saving that second match point. Now, in any case, Eala is hanging in there. She's mentally strong. She has her third match point, and here she's getting more opportunities to be aggressive. So she starts pounding her forehand. She gets one hard forehand to Tauson's side, another very hard forehand. Using her body, she's really throwing herself into these shots, trying to take the match into her own hands. She doesn't want to depend on a mistake from Tauson. But Tauson plays great defense, and Eala ends up making an unforced error on the backhand side. So 3 match points wasted, and I was sure that we're going to get a repeat to the match in Eastbourne where Eala wasted 4 match points. But no, I was very impressed with Eala's composure because she didn't get rattled for wasting those match points, as opposed to Danilovic, who showed a lot of negative body language when she was wasting those match points. No, Eala stayed composed and played an excellent point. She found herself up another match point, her 4th one. She played an aggressive point, and Tauson played a defensive forehand that went a little bit long. And Eala collects her first main draw win at the US Open. Eala won the junior US Open, so she's highly capable of playing excellent tennis at this tournament, and it's going to be very exciting to see how she does in the next round. What I like about watching, for example, Fonseca or Eala is that the support from the fans is so electrifying that it turns these matches into a Davis Cup atmosphere, and it makes them just that much more exciting to watch. Last but not least, I'm going to discuss the Djokovic-Tien night session match. Novak wins in straight sets, 6-1, 7-6, 6-2. Looks pretty straightforward for Novak, but there's a lot about this match that we can discuss. And the first set took about 20 minutes. Tien might have been a little bit nervous. I'm sure it's very difficult to play a night session match, but he started playing extremely well in the second set, and this second set took an hour and 20 minutes. It was an absolute battle, and Tien had opportunities, in my opinion, not only to win the second set, but also to win the whole match. But he didn't, because Novak Djokovic is the strongest player in the history of tennis from the mental standpoint, and something that might not have necessarily been true early in Djokovic's career, where he would retire from matches, but that didn't last long, because Novak turned himself into one of the biggest fighters in the history of tennis, and someone that can recover in matches from physical difficulties. And interestingly, on my channel, we've discussed a lot the fact that I struggled physically in the match against Andre in the hot and humid conditions. For you guys that don't know, I played a guy about half my age, and he was completely fine playing in horrendous conditions, and I was struggling very much. Now, I'm by no means comparing my match to Novak's match, reduce Novak's level by 1,000,000%, and we can talk about my match, but I'm making the comparison because one thing that I'm noticing now that I'm older is, especially when I play against younger guys, the younger guys can recover faster, and it takes me a little bit longer to recover, and I also get more out of breath than I used to, despite the fact that I'm in pretty good shape, relatively speaking. So I am seeing this now from Novak more and more, that he gets gassed in matches. In that second set, you could see Novak going down to his knees. You can see him put his arms up in the air, trying to get air into his lungs. So he was at a point late in that second set where he was struggling a lot. And in my opinion, Tien had a great opportunity to take the second set and make this match extremely difficult and physical for Novak, and maybe take Novak out. He should be able to do that if his opponent is double his age and struggling physically. I'm going to refer back to a video that I made a couple of days ago where I talked about Tsitsipas, who had said that the game has evolved, where nowadays everyone can hit incredibly big with a lot of spin from the baseline. Everyone can serve well. Everyone is fit. And a lot of players have said that the new generation of players doesn't have any weaknesses. But I made the claim in this video that there is still a weakness in the new generation, and that's the mental weakness. So I want you to think of this in the following way. Novak Djokovic didn't win this match because of his physical abilities, because Tien was perfectly fine at the end of the second set, while Djokovic was completely gassed. He played the important points better than Tien, and he 100% mentally won this match. Now, there's another thing that Novak does well, and he gets criticized for this, and that's the fact that he takes medical timeouts that are very timely. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with this, in my opinion, if the medical timeout is legitimate. Djokovic chooses his medical timeouts very wisely because, again, he won that second set tiebreak miraculously, where all of a sudden Tien was serving very slowly. It's hard to explain why, but the serves weren't even cracking 100 miles an hour. And Novak Djokovic won that tiebreak 7-3 despite being completely gassed in that tiebreak. And what does Novak do right after winning the second set? He takes a medical timeout for blisters on his foot. Now, I'm not accusing Novak Djokovic of faking blisters, because I saw a picture. He had a horrendous blister on his toe. But I'm sure that blister didn't open up in the tiebreak. Maybe it was there in the first set, or maybe it was there in the second set. Who knows? But Novak Djokovic took that medical timeout, got a break, and despite him losing his serve in the first game of the third set, I thought that he played a good third set, and I didn't see physical problems like the ones I saw in the second set. So very smart match from Novak. But again, from a mental standpoint, Novak Djokovic is the absolute GOAT. And this is where the next generation of players, with the exception of Sinner and Alcaraz, of course. I'm not talking about those guys because, as I said in that video from a few days ago, those guys, in my opinion, are at the level of the big three. Everyone else on tour, however, compared to an older Novak with physical problems, they're still going to struggle because they are, by a big margin, mentally inferior to him. And when it comes to the most important matches, which happen at the Grand Slam level, Novak Djokovic has a huge advantage, even if he's not 100% fit, or even if he's struggling physically. Now, you guys remember when Novak Djokovic had knee surgery and then he came to Wimbledon a few weeks after the knee surgery and he still made the final? So you can't make the argument that tennis has evolved into a better game, into a more powerful game, without addressing the fact that it's quite possible that the next generation of players, with the exception of Sinner and Alcaraz, are not mentally as strong as the older generation.